The royal guard had been quiet the whole time, standing still and looking like he couldn't move. But when President Obama stopped and offered him a handshake, the guard finally spoke. It was just one sentence, 8 words that made the former commander-in-chief visibly shake. He said, "I've never heard anything like that," and his voice broke. And what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Before we tell you what those words were, hit the subscribe button with the bell icon on, and tell us where you are in the world right now. Now let's get started. The rain in November wasn't hard enough to cancel anything, but it was steady enough to make London feel like it was wrapped in wet wool. The sky was so low that you could practically touch the clouds with your fingers just after 11 in the morning. Barack Obama wasn't supposed to be here, not in a formal way anyway. No press pool, no advanced team, and no perfectly planned picture ops. A former president in a black overcoat walks through Wellington Barracks with the kind of calm determination that only comes when someone is paying their respects on their own terms. His security team stayed close enough to do their jobs, but far enough away to let him breathe. Agent Sarah Mitchell, his main bodyguard, spoke softly into the microphone on her sleeve. "Raven is getting close to the memorial site. The timeline hasn't changed, and the weather is holding." "Copy that, Mitchell," was the answer from command. "Is there anything strange going on in the area?" "No. Standard ceremonial posting. 1 Welsh guard on duty. Tourists are keeping their distance." You could see by the way Obama walked that this wasn't the slow pace of diplomacy. This was about me. He walked like he was carrying something heavy that had nothing to do with the weather. His fingers absently turned over a small bronze object in his right coat pocket. It was a challenge coin he had been carrying around for months without really thinking about it. The guard's memorial was in the middle of the courtyard, plain and dignified against the bleak sky. A few tourists were huddled under umbrellas nearby, and their voices dropped to whispers, as they do in areas that require respect. A teacher was teaching a group of 12-year-olds something. "Now remember, kids," she continued in a quiet voice, "this memorial honors soldiers who gave their lives in service. We show respect by being quiet. And oh my goodness, is that—" Her voice trailed off as she saw the familiar figure coming closer. One of the kids, a lad with messy hair and a gap in his teeth, pulled on her coat sleeve. "Miss Jenkins, who is that man? Why is everyone looking?" "That's President Obama, Jamie. The one from the telly. The American one. Yes, but we shouldn't bother him. He's here to pay his respects." Sophie, a girl with thick glasses and a notebook in her hand, raised her hand eagerly. "Miss Jenkins, didn't he give that famous speech that my dad always talks about?" "Which speech, Sophie?" "The one where he said people from different countries could be friends. Dad claimed it made him cry." Jenkins looked at Obama for a second, then back to her students. "Maybe we'll talk about that later. For now, let's be quiet." But Obama's mind had moved on to something else. Lance Corporal Dylan Price of the Welsh Guards stood still outside the South Wing, across the courtyard. He was 26 years old and had been to Afghanistan 5 times. He was wearing a black bearskin cap that he was used to. Price wasn't just standing there because he had to. He was thinking back. 3 hours before, his sister Megan had called him from Cardiff. "Dylan," she began, her voice full of emotion, "I was going through Dad's things and found something, a letter he never sent." "What do you mean, sent to Obama?" "Listen, Dylan. He wrote a letter to the American president. It was 3 pages long and was hidden in that old cassette player with all of his speeches." Dylan was quiet as he thought. "What did it say?" "Oh, Dylan," Megan's voice broke. "He wrote about you. He was proud that his son stood guard for queens and presidents. He listened to Obama's speech in Cairo every night when the pain got bad because it reminded him that dignity wasn't dead in the world." The letter, which was written in his father's precise handwriting just a few weeks before he died, was hidden inside that old tape player like a message in a bottle. Tom Price's last words, which he never said out loud. "Mr. President, my son is now guarding your palaces. I hope someone tells you that every word you spoke about hope and dignity. My boy carries those words with him every day. You said that everyone has something sacred inside them. Well, sir, you helped me remember what that felt like, even when the cancer was taking everything else away. Thank you for giving an old soldier something to believe in again. Maybe one day you'll meet my Dylan and see what your words helped create." The man was now going right toward Dylan, as if his father's unfinished task had called him. From 50 yards away, Price looked like every other royal guard. Excellent posture, a clean uniform, and that famous calm. But when you looked closely, you could see things that told a different story. For example, The way his left hand held his rifle with just enough pressure to keep it steady but not tense, the slight tension in his jaw from standing still for hours at a time, and the thin purple and gold ribbon that was hidden under the red wool of his tunic. It was so small that you wouldn't have noticed it if you didn't know what to look for. But Dylan didn't get it for losing a fight. He wore it for his father, who died at home, but he had earned it by carrying other people's sadness for decades. Obama didn't know it, but his pace had slowed down. Something about the guard's demeanor struck his attention. Not just the ceremonial of it, but the quiet that comes from discipline and something more. Agent Mitchell saw the change in course right away. She said into her mic, "Raven is going off course," getting close to the ceremonial guard position. Agent Johnson, her companion, moved to a different spot. "Is there any reason to worry?" "No, he looks like he wants to pay his respects. You know how he is with soldiers." "Okay, standard procedures. For now, let him take charge." There was an old man in a heavy wool coat talking to his granddaughter at the rope barrier. "That's a guard for the Queen, love. They never move, no matter what." "Grandpa, what if someone tries to talk to them?" "Not allowed to respond. They have to stay quiet, even if it's someone important." "Even then, Sarah, even then." Obama stopped 3 feet from the guard. That was close enough to talk quietly, but far enough to show respect for the role and the place. Didn't do anything. Couldn't do anything. Protocol was strict. Eyes straight forward, back straight, and breathing steady. The former president of the United States could have been a lamppost for all the official recognition he was allowed to bestow. But even though everything was so silent, Dylan Price's heart was pounding like a marching drum. He knew it was Obama right away when he talked. "It's a lovely morning to stand guard." The phrases were casual and conversational, but there was a warmth below that made it evident this wasn't just small talk. Price didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. No one can get the Welsh guards to talk. But Obama was a man who knew how to read quiet. He had spent 8 years at state dinners and diplomatic meetings, when the most significant things were said in the pauses between words. He could see how tense the guard's jaw was, and how his breathing changed just a little. This wasn't being indifferent. This was power. Obama went on. "I've met a lot of soldiers over the years." His breath was evident in the frigid air. "I shook hands with most of them, thanked them for their service, and said the usual things." He stopped and looked closely at Price's profile. "But I always wondered about the ones I never got to meet, the ones who stood guard while I slept soundly." The school group behind them had stopped talking totally. The kids could even tell that something big was going on. The teacher put a soft finger to her lips, but no one was talking anyhow. "Miss Jenkins," the youngster with the gap-toothed smile said quietly, "why isn't the soldier talking back?" "That's his job, Jamie. He has to stand still and silent all the time, even when the president talks to him. It's called discipline." Sophie moved her spectacles and told her pal, "My dad says discipline means doing the right thing even when it's hard." Obama took out the challenge coin and turned it slowly between his fingers. The bronze caught the tiny bit of light that got through the clouds, and the presidential seal shone brightly on his palm. "I've given away maybe 30 of these coins in 8 years, he remarked gently. "They're always to people who went above and beyond, saved lives, and showed extraordinary courage." He stopped and watched the raindrops gather on the metal surface. "But as I stand here and look at you, I think I might have gotten it wrong." Price's respiration changed in a way that was almost unnoticeable. Obama got it. Maybe the real courage isn't in the big moments. Maybe it's in standing here every day and being a symbol that people can believe in. Agent Mitchell, who was watching from her position, said gently into her microphone, "Duration extending beyond planned time frame. Raven appears to be having a moment." "Having a moment." "Got it. Are there any security issues?" "No, just let him be human for a minute. Father was in the military, right?" The question hit like a rock in quiet water. Obama saw a small sign that Price's grip on his gun had tightened just enough for him to see it. It was clear to someone who had spent years learning how to read people. "I can tell," Obama said in a low voice. "Not just the training you get here, but something deeper, something you learned at home. The way you hold that rifle isn't just for show, it's muscle memory." The old man in the crowd was paying close attention. "Something's going on here, love," he murmured to his granddaughter. "Something important." "What do you mean, Grandpa?" "The way that President is looking at our guard and talking to him. This isn't just politeness. This is respect." Obama reached out his hand, palm up, with the coin in the middle like a gift. "I save this for special occasions. I usually give them to people who have done something amazing." He stopped, and the rain started to accumulate on the coin's surface. "But I think I've been measuring extraordinary wrong." The crowd was suddenly utterly quiet. People were still recording on their phones, but the mood had changed from casual recording to solemn witnessing. It looked like even the security detail was leaning in a little. The price didn't change, couldn't get up. But for a split second, something changed in his gaze, like clouds parting to let a little brightness shine through. Obama was patient. He didn't push, didn't take for granted. He just stood there with his palm out, waiting like a rock. He murmured softly, "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." And then, against all odds, Price moved. Not a lot, just enough. His right hand moved with military precision to the front of his body to take the coin. The movement was controlled and planned, yet it was also clearly human, a gesture that connected ritual and connection. Their hands touched for a short time, long enough for Obama to feel the young soldier's strong grip, and long enough for Price to understand that this wasn't a political stunt. This was real. "Thank you," Obama said simply. Price clenched his fingers over the coin and put his hand back in place. But for the first time since Obama had come up to him, he looked into the eyes of the former president. The first words arrived then, calm and collected, but with the weight of 18 months of absolute silence now broken. "Sir, my father died this spring." Obama's face changed right away. The polite interest went away and was replaced by something deeper, something that understood the shape of loss and how to make room for it. Obama said, "I'm sorry for your loss," and the statements had the weight of someone who has comforted many families who were hurting. What was his name? Tom Price, Sir Thomas Arthur Price, Welsh Guards, just like me, but 20 years ago. Obama said, "That's a good Welsh name." What did he do after his time in the service? Worked for 20 years driving trucks through the valleys, never complained about it, said honest work was honest work. Obama nodded slowly. Man who works, man who works. Price verified. Never asked for much, but he had faith. He thought that dignity wasn't just for the rich and that words could change how people saw themselves. That sounds like someone I would get along with. Tell me more about him. Price thought for a moment, then seemed to make up his mind. He had lung cancer, sir. He couldn't talk much in the last few weeks because of the medicine, but he could listen. What did he hear? He had this old cassette player. It was a beat-up thing from the 80s, maybe even older than me. It was red plastic, had one speaker that crackled when you turned the volume up, and he asked for one recording every day toward the end. Obama's hands, which had been loosely held in front of him, stopped moving totally. "Your speech in Cairo, sir. June 2009. He listened to it over and over for hours. The ex-president blinked slowly as he thought about it. The one that talks about starting over and finding common ground? Andrew? That's the one, sir. He played that tape 3 times in a row. Price's jaw tightened a little, which was the only hint that he was holding back his feelings. You were the only politician he'd ever heard talk about dignity, as if it were something everyone deserved, not just the people who could vote for you. Agent Mitchell wiped her eyes and hoped no one saw her behind them. What part did he play the most? Obama inquired softly. The part where you said that everyone has something sacred inside them, and the part where you talked about working people, how they might not get their names in history books, but they're the ones who keep the world running. Obama's eyes got a little bigger. I remember writing that part. I stayed up all night making sure the words were right. Well, sir, you got them right for him. He'd rewind that part and play it over and over. He said it was the first time he heard a politician talk about dignity like it was something you earned through work, not something you got handed because of where you were born. Neither of the men had noticed that the crowd around them had expanded. People in the barracks were talking about something that had never happened before. But everyone stayed away, knowing that this moment was only for these 2 men. "There's something else," Price replied, his voice getting even lower. "Something I wasn't sure I should tell you." Obama held off. "My sister found a letter this morning. Dad wrote it to you, sir, but he never sent it. He just put it in that old cassette player. It was 3 pages long, written in his careful handwriting, the kind he used for important things. He wrote about how your words helped him through the worst days. Listening to that speech made him feel like he mattered, even when the cancer was taking everything else away." Obama's breathing had become shallow. "What else did he say?" "Sir, he wrote about me. He wrote about how proud he was that his son stood guard for queens and presidents, and how he hoped someone would tell you that your words about dignity lived on in places you'd never know about." "Jesus," Obama said softly. "But here's the thing that will break your heart, sir. In the last line of that letter he wrote, 'Maybe one day you'll meet my Dylan. Maybe you'll see what your words helped make.'" That's when Obama's composure began to crumble. He opened his mouth a little, but no sound came out. His eyes filled up, not in a big way that would make the news, but enough that anyone observing could recognize the moment when professional distance turned into human connection. "He said that," Obama said, although his voice was hard to hear. "Word for word, sir. My sister read it to me over the phone this morning and made me promise to tell you if I ever got the chance." Miss Jenkins was softly telling her students what they were seeing from the school group. "This is what real leadership looks like, kids. It's not about being important. It's about knowing that everyone is important." Jamie raised his hand. "Miss Jenkins, why is the president so sad?" "Jamie, he's not sad. He's moved. Someone he never met trusted him to say the right thing when it mattered most." Sophie, still holding her notebook, said, "Did he say the right thing?" "Yes, he did, Sophie." "There's more," Price said, his voice firm but full of feeling. "The nurses had turned off the tape player that morning because he wasn't responding anymore. But I saw him trying to move his hand toward it, so I turned it back on." Obama leaned forward a little and listened to every word. "Sir, the last thing he heard was your voice, the part where you said that everyone, no matter their race, religion, or nationality, has something sacred inside them. He died listening to you tell him he mattered." At that point, Obama completely lost it. He shook his shoulders for a second, and then put his palm over his mouth. Agent Mitchell moved forward without thinking, but then she stopped herself, because she knew her role was to give her protectees space to be human. Obama said, "I'm sorry. I never know how much of what we say actually gets through to people. You spend all this time choosing your words, hoping they mean something, but you never really know." "It got to him, sir. It got to him every day for the last 11 years of his life." A group of older guys had taken off their hats and were holding them over their hearts. He had fought in Korea and lost comrades there. He knew what grief looked like when it finally found a place to fall. His granddaughter inquired, "Grandpa, why is everyone crying?" "Because sometimes, love, you can see how one person's words can help another person get through the worst times, and that's something to cry about." Obama drew a shaky breath in an effort to calm down. "Can I call you Dylan, Dylan?" "Of course, sir. Did your father ever tell you which words were most important to him?" Price nodded. "He used to quote one line back to me whenever I wasn't sure what I was doing. The same thing that makes a man work with honor in the valleys makes him stand guard with honor at a palace." Obama's eyes got bigger. "I never said those exact words." "No, sir, but that's what he heard when you said that dignity is universal. That's how he thought about what you said." "Oh my God," Obama said. "Sir, he made everything better. That was his gift." They stood there for a little while longer. Two men joined by the memory of a third man who had found hope in words spoken years before to an audience he would never meet. Balmer nodded slowly, and then he did something that no former president should probably do in public. He walked forward, past the imaginary line that separates citizens from ceremonial, and reached out his hand, not for a handshake nor for a photo op, but to join two sons who knew what it was like to lose the man who taught them how to stand. Price didn't think twice. He moved his firearm to his left hand and reached out with his right. They shook hands quickly and firmly, the kind that shows they understood each other instead of introducing themselves. Obama stated, "I wish I could have met him." "Yes, you did, sir," Price said. "He used to say that every time he played that tape, it was like talking to an old friend." "What else did he say about the speech? I mean, what it meant to him?" Price let out a faint smile that was barely there but there. He said, "You understood something most politicians don't. Dignity isn't about what you have. It's about how you act when you don't have much." When Obama spoke, his voice was heavy. "That sounds like wisdom gained the hard way. I've been driving trucks through Wales for 20 years, and you learn things about dignity when you haul freight at 4 in the morning and still show up on time because your word matters. Please tell me more about him. I need to know more about the man who understood my words better than I did." Price looked around and saw that they were being watched, but then he seemed to conclude it didn't matter. "He never missed a day of work in 20 years, sir. Not one. He said that a man's reliability was his most important possession, even when his arthritis was so bad he could barely hold the steering wheel." Obama remarked, "The Wales I remember from my visits, people who know that character isn't what you do when people are watching." That's what he'd say, sir. "Character is what you do when no one else will ever know about it." Mitchell spoke softly into her microphone. "Command, we're way behind schedule, but I suggest we let this go on. It's important." "Got it, Mitchell. He can take as long as he needs." Obama didn't care who watched him wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. "Sir, Dylan, could you please do me a few favors? First, could you give me your sister's phone number? I'd like to write to her about your father." "Of course, sir." "Second, I want to read that letter. Would she be okay with sharing it? I believe she would be honored, sir. And third, Obama stopped and looked Price in the eyes. The next time you stand this post, remember that you're not just representing the crown, you're also carrying your father's dignity with you, and that matters more than you know. When Price answered, his voice was steady, but his eyes were ablaze. Yes, sir. Every day. Good man. Obama stepped back, knowing he had crossed a line. Well, I guess I should let you get back to work now. Sir, there's one more thing. Actually, Obama waited. That letter my dad wrote, the last line after he said he hoped you'd meet me. Yes, he wrote, if you meet my Dylan, tell him his old man was right about dignity. Tell him it's not what you get, but what you refuse to let others take away. Obama lost any control of himself. He put both hands on his face and cried, not the careful tears of a famous person, but the deep sadness of a guy who had just gotten a message from the dead. Everyone in the crowd was very quiet because they knew they were seeing something holy. Obama's voice was quieter and steadier when he could speak again. Think of it delivered, son. Price started to bring back the quietness as quietly as he had shattered it. He put his weapon back in the right place, straightened his back, and got ready to go back to the beautiful calm that had originally captured Obama's attention. But Obama wasn't quite ready to let it go. He said, Dylan, treating the guard's name like a blessing. Yes, sir. Your father was right about dignity, and you show it every day as a son. Price nodded sharply once. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Stand tall, son. You're carrying more than you know. Obama turned and proceeded toward the memorial. His steps were steadier now than they had been an hour before. He walked like a guy who had just been reminded of the importance of words, dignity, and the fact that the discussion between leaders and citizens never actually stops. Price went back to his place behind him. The throng slowly started to leave, unsure of what they had seen, but confident it was essential. People put their phones away. People started talking quietly again. But the old guy was telling his granddaughter what she had just witnessed near the rope boundaries. That, my love, is what happens when someone realizes that their words will live on in the best way possible. What do you mean, Grandpa? 11 years ago, that president thought he was just giving a speech. Today, he found out that for months he had been keeping a dying man company every night. The teacher was getting her students together, but she couldn't help but give them one more lesson. Remember this day, kids. Remember how it feels when words go farther than anyone thought they could. Jamie put his hand up. Miss Jenkins, will that guard tell other people that he met the president? No, Jamie. Guards don't talk about what they do, but he'll remember it for the rest of his life. Sophie thought about it and changed her glasses. Miss Jenkins, do you think the president will remember it too? I think, Sophie, this is the kind of thing you'll always remember. Obama finished his visit to the memorial by setting down his wreath with hands that shook a little. He stood still for a few minutes, with his head down and his shoulders against the rain. But he was standing differently now. He didn't have to worry about whether his remarks meant any more. Now he had to know that they did. Agent Mitchell came up quietly. Sir, we should probably start walking toward the car. Obama nodded but didn't move right away. Sarah, I need you to do a few things for me. Of course, sir. First, get in touch with the Welsh Guard's command structure. When we get back, I'm going to write some letters. Sir, letters. To a family in Cardiff, to the young man's commanding officer, and to some people who need to know that their words hit home. He stopped and watched the guard go back to being perfectly still. And Sarah, yes, sir, call my speechwriting team. I want the transcript of the Cairo speech. Every draft, every revision, and every word we cut. I need to remember how it felt to write something that was so important. Of course, sir. Anything else? Again, Obama gazed back toward the south wing. Yeah, clear my schedule for tomorrow morning. I'm going to write some letters that should have been written years ago. Obama sat in the back car and took out his phone as his convoy got ready to go. He looked through his contacts until he found the number for his old chief speechwriter. Hey John, it's Barack. I know it's been a while, but I need to ask you something. Do you remember why we put that part about working people in the Cairo speech? The one that said dignity is universal? He listened for a moment, then grinned for the first time that day. I just met someone who reminded me why we do this job, why words matter, and why every speech could be someone's last comfort. He stopped and looked out the rain-streaked windows at London. I'll call you later. I need to write some letters right now. 3 days later, the American embassy would call Megan Price. She was getting a package at her home in Cardiff. It was a letter from the former president and a request. Price, this is strange, but Mr. Obama wants to put your father's letter in his presidential library, with your permission, of course. He says it shows something important about how democracy really works. not just in voting booths, but also when people find hope in each other's words. But he had also done something else. He had asked his charity to set up a tiny scholarship fund for kids of duty people in Wales. There was nothing big, or with his name on it, simply support for youngsters whose parents were on duty while the rest of the world slept soundly. The fund would be called the Thomas Arthur Price Memorial Scholarship. It would be for the offspring of working people who knew that dignity was not something that came with birth, but something that was earned. But on that day, when it was raining outside Wellington Barracks, none of it had happened yet. That day was mostly about two guys discovering each other across an unimaginable distance, linked by the memory of a third man who thought words might alter the world, and maybe, just maybe, they could. Dylan Price would be promoted to corporal 6 months later. His commanding officer would say during the ceremony that they had received a letter from Washington praising him for upholding the best traditions of the Welsh Guards by showing great decorum in very difficult situations. But Price would never tell anyone what they talked about that led to the praise. Guards don't talk about what they do. He would, however, keep the bronze challenge coin in his pocket. He stood guard every day, and sometimes, when the rain fell just right, and the wind carried the sound of traffic from far away, he would hear his father's voice blending with the words of an American president. His father had told him that dignity was something you decided to wear, no matter who was watching. Even when they happen in whispers, certain interactions change everything. Even if it costs you everything, certain silences are worth breaking. And sometimes, a miracle that looks like a coincidence comes true for a dying man. Would you have broken the rules for a moment like that? Do you think it's okay to break some silences? And what would you have said if you were in the guard's place? If this tale made you remember why respect is important, please like it. If you want to see more times when the people in uniforms act like people, subscribe and hit the bell. If you know someone who needs to hear about dignity in action, tell them this story. Right now, your next story is on your screen. Click it, and I'll see you tomorrow with another moment that shows how powerful it is to remember that we're all human. The same time and place. Don't miss it.